Dear, kayo na mag-pray ha.
Good afternoon po sa ating lahat mga kapatid. Good afternoon, Sister Carol.
Good afternoon, Sister Bianca.
Ayan, at happy Sabbath.
Ayan, happy Sabbath po. Ganun din po sa aming mga viewers.
Yan, sa ating pong viewers na sa Facebook at sa YouTube live natin. Happy Sabbath po sa ating lahat. Ayan, so Sister Carol, no, ngayong hapon, supposedly ngayong hapon, Sister Carol, o ngayong umaga, ay dapat sinaselebrate natin ang Community Guest Day.
Oo nga, Sister
Yun.
Bianca.
Tapos taon-taon siya, no, Sister Carol, at hindi lang AY ang ministry under this. Meron din tayong Sabbath School, sa women, sa worship, at kung ano-ano pa.
Yan, parang join force talaga kapag may
Yes.
Community Guest Day, no, Sister Bianca?
Ayan, so bago muna natin batiin yung ating mga viewers, ayan, gusto ko lang tanungin, Sister Carol, ano ba yung usually natin ginagawa kapag Community Guest Day?
Ay, kapag Community Guest Day, usually, nag-i-invite tayo ng mga friends natin na non-Adventist, tas pinapapunta natin dito sa church para makita nila kung ano yung flow ng program natin, paano tayo mag-worship, yung mga kaibigan natin na willing, hindi naman yung sasapilitan, di ba? Kaya nga Community Guest Days, yung mga community sa labas, yung ini-invite natin sa church.
Ayan. Ayan. Tapos, Sister Carol, no, yung mga programs natin tuwing community guest, hindi siya yung usual programs na ginagawa natin.
Tama, parang naalala ko nga pag community guest day, ang dami nating invite na singers, na kumakanta. Di ba kasi nga hindi tayo more on nag-speak kasi di ba sabi nila mas maganda daw or nakaka-touch ng puso yung music. Kaya madalas more on music tayo kapag community guest day. Yun yung naaalala ko.
Yun. At isa pa, yung approach natin sa ating mga programs ay ginagawa natin siyang hindi siya nakakabigla kapag ikaw ay naging bisita sa church.
Tama,
Kundi
parang
yung mafe-feel nila is, ay wow, feeling ko welcome ako dito sa church. Ang ganda ng programs, parang na mas nararamdaman kong pagmamahal ng Panginoon.
tama, parang friendly approach.
Yun.
Ayan, yung parang sinasabi natin sa kaibigan namin kayo, ganyan, no?
Ayan.
Tsaka, ano ba yung mga nagugustuhan mo kapag
Alam mo,
community
Sister
guest
Carol,
day?
pinakagusto ko talaga lahat sa community guest day. Bukod sa marami tayong nakikilala mga bisita galing sa ating mga kapatiran na nagdadala ng mga non-Adventist friends. Siyempre, hindi ko makakalimutan yung pa-buffet nila sa taas.
Ay, tama, no?
Grabe, no?
Lagi yun, ang dami nating pagkain
Masarap,
kapag
sarap talaga.
community guest day.
Oo, tas
Yun yung nakakamiss talaga kasi ngayon
Yes.
wala eh.
Wala na, hindi na tayo pwede mag-gathering sa taas. Baka, imbis na mabusog tayo, is magkasakit pa tayo, Sister Carol.
Tama,
Kaya,
no? Pero nakakamiss talaga yung kasi, di ba, hindi lang tayo nabusog sa salita, nabusog pa tayo sa sa
Ayan.
tiyan natin,
so,
di ba?
namimiss ko na yung ating mga deaconess na mga nagluluto at nag-aasikaso kapag community
Diba?
guest
Kaya kapag
day.
community guest day, hindi lang tayo yung tuwan-tuwa, kundi yung mga kaibigan din natin na ini-invite natin.
Yes, ayan. So, enough na dyan sa community guest day, Sister Carol. Batiin naman natin ang ating mga viewers na nanonood sa hapong ito. Gusto ko pong batiin si Sister Josephine Banar. Sabi niya ay Joyful Sabbath afternoon, children of God.
Ayan.
Ayan, happy Sabbath po.
So gusto ko din batiin, ayan, dito ko nakita, ang una ko nakita is yung papa mo. Kasama lang natin siya pero nag-comment pa rin siya dito. Sabi niya, ayan, thank you so much Atty. LJ for accepting our invitation. Good luck and God bless.
Ayan.
Ayan.
So, si Atty. LJ mamaya ang ating guest speaker. Ayan. So, happy Sabbath po, Brother June. Sana po ay hinaan nyo po ang volume ng phone nyo dahil ang lakas-lakas. Ayan. Okay. So, happy Sabbath din po kay Sister Madeline Luces Gregas sa Gregas family.
Ayan.
Lagi silang supportive talaga kahit anong church programs.
Lagi sila nanonood. Active. Lagi mo makikita nagko-comment at nanonood
Yes.
from Sabbath School to AY. Yan dyan
Amen.
talaga sila. Ayan. Happy Sabbath din po kay Sister McCoy Torres. Ayan. Happy Sabbath po sa inyo.
Ayan, and happy Sabbath din po kay Brother Warlito Tejero Bagayo. Happy Sabbath po sa inyo.
Ayan. Nag-comment din si Sister Betty Luces. Happy Sabbath day and God bless you. Happy Sabbath po.
Happy Sabbath po, Sister Betty, and happy Sabbath din po kay Sister Melba Perlado.
Ayan.
And syempre, sa ating church clerk na si Sister Lizelle Sumagaysay at sa kanyang asawa. Ha blessed Sabbath everyone. Gaganda ng mga host. Ayan.
Thank you po.
Alam namin, Char.
Ayan.
Ayan, happy Sabbath po sa inyo, Sister Lizelle. Naway, magpagaling kayo dyan sa Cebu.
Ayan.
Ayan, and happy Sabbath din po kay Sister Gertrudis Libadiolor. Nakita ko is watching right now.
Ayan, yan
Isa
si
siya sa ating
Sister.
mga top notchers. Kasama sila Sister Makoy.
Oo, dyan sa ating Bible quiz. Hindi
Yes.
talaga sila mawawala kapag kada AY, no, lagi silang active sa ating
Yes.
Bible quiz.
And happy Sabbath din po kay Brother Alvin Ubanya. Happy Sabbath
Happy
po.
Sabbath po. And happy Sabbath po sa aming 19 viewers. Ayan, di man po namin masabi ang lahat ng inyong pangalan. Binabati po namin kayo ng magandang araw po ng Sabado.
Ayan, so happy Sabbath po. Naway, habang nanonood po kayo nito, ay mag-comment pa po kayo para ma-recognize po namin kayo. Mag-heart react na rin po kayo at i-share nyo na rin po ang live stream para marami ba rin po makakita at makanood.
Tama,
Ayan, so
ayan.
Sister Carol, bago tayo magsimula sa ating programa ngayong hapon, no, inaanyayahan kita na manguna sa ating panalangin.
Ayan, so tayo muna po ay yumuko sa panalangin. Let's pray. Panginoon, maraming pong salamat sa pagkakataon pong ito na kami po muli ay magpapatuloy ng pagpupuri po sa inyo at pag-aaral po ng inyong salita. Panginoon, sa hapong ito, ang inyong patnubay at paggabay ang aming maranasan at lahat po ng aming maririnig ay makatulong po upang mas lalo pa pong mapatibay po ang aming pananampalataya sa inyo at makapagbago po ng aming pamumuhay. Ito po aming niling sa pangalan ni Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Ayan. So mga kapatid, kami po ay natutuwa at wini-welcome po namin kayo sa programa namin ngayong hapon na may pamagat na And Eat Now, Bringing Peace Home. Ayan. So, ang programa natin ngayong hapon ay continuation lang po ng programa kaninang umaga, Sister Carol.
Simula
no?
kaninang Sabbath School hanggang Divine, yun na yung pinag-usapan natin. At pagpapatuloy natin pag-usapan yung kung paano ba nating i-end ang hindi magandang relasyon sa loob ng ating pamilya.
Amen. Ayan. So, bago ang lahat, Sister Carol, no, syempre, hindi natin makakalimutan ang ating weekly na Bible quiz. Ayan.
So, mag-start na tayo sa ating Bible quiz.
Ayan. So, sana lahat sila nakapagbasa ng 1 Samuel 3-4.
Chapter 3-4.
Yes. So, sa chapters 3-4 na tayo, Sister Carol.
Tama,
Ayan.
Sister Bianca, alam mo ba yung paggawa natin ng Bible quiz? Minsan nabibitin ako ng 1 to 10. Ang dami kong gusto ipatanong. Kaso lang, syempre, di ba, hindi naman natin pwedeng masyadong habaan ang ating quiz. Kasi quiz lang naman to.
Yes.
Titingnan lang naman natin kung talagang may natutunan
Nagbabasa
sila.
Okay
Tama.
lang yan, Sister Carol. Bawi tayo sa comprehensive. Ayan. So, mga kapatid, simulan na po natin ang ating Bible quiz ngayong hapon. Ang unang pong question ay... Ang una pong tanong ay, whose eyesight was going dim so that he could not see?
Ayan.
Madali lang to, Sister Carol, kahit di ka nagbasa, basta familiar sa'yo yung story, kilala mo
Alam
din.
na alam mo to. Promise
Sino
talaga.
daw ba yung eyesight na medyo nagdidilim na or hindi na siya makakita? Sino daw yung taong yon?
Ayan. So, may mga nagko-comment na. So, di ba nung mga bata pa lang tayo, kinukwento na sa atin yan.
Oo.
Kaya, sure ako na
Alam
ito
ko
ay
ng lahat.
easy question lang sa kanila.
Easy question lang daw. Ayan, so may nakikita na ako nagsasagot, Sister Carol.
Meron na.
Sige, so tingnan na natin kung ano ang tamang sagot. Ang tamang pong sagot ay si Priest Ellie or
Ayan.
Ellie or Eli.
Ayan.
Ayan. At matatagpuan ang tamang sagot sa 1 Samuel chapter 3 verse 2. At ang una pong nakakuha ng tamang sagot ay si
Sister Gertrudes.
Ayan, si Sister Trudes. Tama po ba? Communications? Yes.
Yan,
Ayan,
tama
nagbabalik
daw po.
ng ating mga top-notchers.
Ayan.
Sila yung mga nagsasagot.
Mukhang malakas ang signal nila ngayon.
Yes. So, ayan. So, si Ellie po ang tamang sagot. So, proceed na tayo sa second question, Sister Carol. Ayan. So, as Samuel was lying down in the temple, how many times did he go to Eli after he heard his own name being called?
Ayan.
Gaano karaming beses siya pumunta muna kay
Oo.
Eli?
Kasi di ba nung natutulog siya, alam natin, may tumatawag sa kanya.
So,
Tapos ang akala niya,
Oo. So, ilang beses siya pumunta kay Eli?
ilan kaya? Ilang beses?
Mabilis lang to. Ayan. So, habang...
Sobrang bilis ng neto kasi alam na nila ang
Oo, kahit
kwento
hindi
eh.
ka mag-aral ng 1 Samuel 3-4, pero mas maganda pa rin aralin pa rin natin to, Sister
Ayan. So magbasa
Carol.
muna tayo ng mga comment kasi madali lang naman yung question. Ayan, sabi pala ni Sister Lizelle, nasa Mindanao daw sila, dear.
Ay, sorry na. Watching from... Okay, Agusan del Norte. Ayan. So, sorry na, Sister Lizelle.
Ayan.
Parang hindi ako pinsan, no?
At yung kasunod na nag-comment, ayan, so galing kay Diomedes del Rosario sa aking tatay. Happy
Yes.
Sabbath
Happy
daw.
Sabbath po, Kuya Deo.
Happy
And
Sabbath
syempre,
po.
Happy Sabbath everyone from Pangasinan. Galing kay Sister Leia Cerezo. Wow.
Ayan, so hindi lang tayo within Pasig area.
Oo,
no, maabot
nationwide
tayo.
talaga tayo, Sister Carol.
Oo,
May from
naalala ko dati, no,
Pangasinan.
may mga taga-ibang bansa pa na nagko-comment dito.
Ayan. So, Sister Carol, no, may nakikita na akong nagsasagot.
Oo
So,
nga, meron
tingnan
na.
na natin kung ano ang tamang sagot. Ang tamang sagot po ay 3
Three
times
times,
or
ayan.
3 beses. At makikita iyon sa 1 Samuel 3:4-5. 4 to 8. 4 to 8. Ayan. So, ayun. At ang una po nakakuha ng tamang sagot ay si Sister Makoy Torres. Tama
Ayan.
po ba? Yes. Ayan, hindi po 4 times, hindi rin 2 times,
Kundi 3 times. Ayan, 3
Ayan.
beses po siya pumunta kay Priest Eli at tinatanong niya kung bakit siya tinatawag, no?
Oo, pero yun nga, hindi nga siya yung...
Wag na natin ituloy kasi baka
Ayun
may
na
masabi
nga.
tayo sa
So, sabi dito ni Brother Cyrus Rondael, Happy Sabbath from Bugasong, Antique. Wow.
Ayan.
Sa Antique na tayo, Sister Cara.
Alayo na naaabot ng ating live. Kaya yung mga viewers po namin na 21 viewers, pakishare pa po ang ating live para po mas madami pa pong makanood sa ating program sa hapong ito.
Ayan, so happy Sabbath po, Brother Cyrus. Ayan, so doon na tayo sa ating third question, Sister Carol. Sa ating pangatlong tanong, when Samuel heard his name being called again, what did Eli tell him to say? Ano
Ayan.
daw ang gusto, ano daw yung sasabihin dapat ni Samuel kapag narinig niya ulit na may tumawag sa kanyang pangalan?
Alam natin to. Alam ko may kanta pa neto eh.
Yes, so kakantahin mo mamaya kapag
Hindi.
na ano na natin yung sagot.
Parang ginawa siyang song kung
Ayan.
ano yung response ni Samuel.
Ayan, so sabi dito, may nag-comment pa si Brother Jun Sumagaysay regard sa tanan nga mga taga-Bugasong SDA Church, bro. So baka kakilala to ni Papa. Ayan, so happy Sabbath din kay Sister Christine Baluyot. Alam mo si Sister Christine, miss ko na to, yung kaingayan niya. Matagal na siyang hindi nakakapag-church.
Oo nga, tama.
Ayan, so we miss you, Sister
Isa rin tong
Christine.
madaldal.
Yes,
Diba?
so happy Sabbath, Sister Christine. Ayan. So, dahil pandemic na rin at hindi masyado nakakapunta mga kabataan sa church, online muna tayo.
Online muna.
Ayan. So, may nakikita na akong nagsasagot. Pwede ba nating makita ang tamang sagot, Sister Carol? Pwede mo na rin bang kantahin?
At ang tamang sagot po ay,
Sabi dito ay, Speak,
Speak,
Lord, for your servant
hears.
hears.
Ayan. Sa ibang version, yung sinasabi, yung sa kanta, di ba, Here I am, Lord. Yun yung
Yes, so pwede na rin siya. Consider na rin yun,
Oo,
Sister
kasi
Carol.
yun din naman yung pinaka-common na alam natin na sagot. Siguro
Yes.
sa version lang na to, yun yung pagkakasabi.
Basta speak, Lord, for your servant hears or for I am here, ganyan. At makikita po ito sa 1 Samuel 3:9. Ang una po nakakuha ng tamang sagot ay si Sister Gertrudes Libadia,
Ayan.
Lord. Tama po ba communications? Yes, same naman sila ng here I am or speak, Lord, or your servant hears, ganyan. Basta yung thought ba is nandoon.
Okay.
Hindi naman natin kailangan ng verbatim or word per word. Basta yun.
So, meron na pong 2 points si Sister Gertrudes and 1 point po para kay Sister
Makoy. Ayan.
So, yung mga, madami din nagko-comment actually. Ang dami din kaso lang yun nga, ang labanan dito ay pabilisan ng internet at pabilisan
yun.
mag-type. Ayan.
Okay.
So, yung mga iba dyan, kapag feeling nyo pong kayo po yung nauna dun sa screen nyo, susundin po natin yung dun sa technical at sa una po namin nakikita.
Amen.
Ayan.
Ayan. Okay, so happy Sabbath din po kay Isan Seriola. Happy Sabbath po and kay Sister Estela Deapera.
Ayan. Happy
Okay.
Sabbath po sa inyo.
So, para po sa ating pang-apat na katanungan, ang ating pong fourth question ay, the Lord would punish the house of Eli or Eli forever for the iniquity that he knew because his sons were blaspheming God. And Eli did not do what? Ano daw yung hindi ginawa ni Eli?
Ayan.
Nung nakikita niya ang pasaway or binabastos ng mga anak niya ang Panginoon.
Tama. Ito yung pinakamabigat na parang kasalanan ni
Yes. Bilang magulang,
Eli.
no? Ano daw ba yung hindi ginawa ni Eli? Kaya, bakit ganun?
Bakit paparusahan yung pamilya niya, no?
Bakit ganun? Alam na natin to lahat, Sister Carol, no? So,
Oo.
maghintay lang tayo ng tamang sagot.
Ayan.
So, happy Sabbath po kay Brother Rick de Guzman. Happy
Sabbath
Sabbath.
po.
And
At
kay
kay-
Sister Catherine Valencia, Happy Sabbath Pasig Church from Lawag City.
Ayun,
Karo,
layo talaga natin.
natutuwa ako dahil hindi lang taga-Pasig ang mga nanonood sa ating AY program.
Di ba nakakatuwa kasi hindi lang yung magbe-benefit sa hapon na ito ang mga taga-Pasig, kundi ang mga kapatiran din natin na malalayo sa atin.
Yun nga, Sister Carol, at mas marami pang makakapakinig ng message mamaya galing sa ating guest speaker.
Diba?
Ayan, so sana ay hindi mo na sila umalis sa ating programa ngayong
Tama.
hapon.
Di ba tingnan mo kung 26, kung tigi-isang member ng family yung nanonood dyan, 26 family ang mabibless
Yes.
ngayong hapon na to sa ating topic.
Ayan. So, ayan, Sister Carol, may nagsasagot na atin na pong tingnan kung ano ang tamang sagot.
Ayan.
Ang
So, ang tamang sagot po
sa
ay-
ating fourth question ay, ayan. Ang tamang sagot po ay, He did not restrain them.
Ayan.
So, Sister Carol, hindi dinisiplina or hindi pinigilan ni Ellie ang kanyang mga anak.
So, di ba parang ang laki nga kasalanan noon
Yes.
sa harap ng Panginoon. Kasi nga, di ba sabi nga, train up a child.
In a way,
Tapos
should go.
hindi niya nagawa.
Yes.
So, kaya yun yung parusa na binigay ng Panginoon sa kanya.
Amen. Ayan. So, makikita natin dito na ang una pong nakakuha ng tamang sagot ay si
Sister McCoy.
Makoy Torres.
Torres.
Ayan. So,
Ayan.
mas specific kasi mas specific yung sinabi ni Sister Makoy kesa kay Sister Gertrudes na anything. He did not do
Anything.
what? He did not do anything.
Oo.
Pero para mas maganda yung sagot ni Sister Makoy, kaya mas i-consider natin, no?
Ayan, tama. Sister McCoy po ang nauna.
Yes.
Nakakuha ng tamang sagot. Ayan. So, nakita ko na nandiyan na si Sister Arlene.
Yes, isa
Nagko-comment
pa
na
sa
siya.
mga ating,
Oo.
isa pa sa ating mga top notchers.
Ayan, nandiyan na siya.
Ayan. Pero malay natin, para sa 1 Samuel na book, iba na yung manalo sa quiz.
Tama.
Ayan.
So, meron na po tayong 2 points para kay Sister Gertrudes and 2 points po para po kay Sister McCoy.
Ayan. So,
Ayan.
para po sa ating fifth question, the Lord appeared and revealed Himself to Samuel in the temple at what place?
Ayan.
Saang temple? Sa templo ba ng Pasig?
Oo.
Sa templo ba ng Marikina? Hindi
Ayan.
natin alam.
So, kasi di ba parang iniisip, parang kung tatanungin lang natin kung saan nag-appear yung Panginoon, pwedeng temple lang yung sabihin. So, mas maganda yung tanong ay specific kung saang temple ba.
Yes. So,
Ayan, tingnan
kung
natin
saang
kung
temple.
nabasa ba nila yan.
Ayan, so happy Sabbath din po kay Sister Star Marimar. Happy Sabbath Pasig SDA Church.
Ayan. So, nakasama din natin to si Sister Star Marimar.
Yes.
Dito dati.
Sobrang
Pinsan to
tagal
ni
na
AJ,
nun.
no?
Oo.
Oo,
Pati
nakasama
nila
na.
Jared, ayan.
Oo.
Ayan. Actually, madami sila magpipinsan dito. Di ko na nga alam kung sino yung magkakamag-anak sa Pasig. Ayan. So, nakikita ko ng tamang sagot, Sister Carol. Ang tamang sagot po ay sa templo ng Shiloh.
Ayan.
Shiloh. Ayan.
Shiloh.
At makikita po ito sa 1 Samuel 3 verse 21. At ang una po nakakuha ng tamang sagot ay si Sister Makoy
Makoy
Torres
Torres.
pa rin ba? Yes.
Yes,
Ayan.
ayan.
So ano ba tong internet ni Sister Makoy at siya lagi ang nauuna,
Ano?
Sister Carol, no?
Baka umakyat na to sa may mas mataas na signal.
Yun. Baka nga nasa tabi nila yung poste ng PLDT or Globe or ng Converge, hindi ko rin alam.
Ang bilis, no? Ayan.
Ayan. So, as para sa ating sixth question, Sister Carol, atin na pong bilisan. Ayan. So, where did the Israelites camp as they went out to battle with the Philistines?
Ayan. So,
Ayan.
place ulit yung tinatanong.
Lugar ulit. Pero ngayon, kung saan naman sila nagpahinga or nag-camp? Nung papunta sila sa labanan,
Laban sa
laban sa
Palestine.
Philistines. Ayan. Hirap ng Tagalog. Ayan. So, Sister Carol, no, nung tayo yung mga bata pa, nagka-camping din tayo.
Oo.
Pero
Ang
hindi
saya.
naman papunta sa isang laban. Hindi na.
Pero nagtitrain tayo.
Oo.
Kala mo lang pupunta tayo sa laban.
Oo.
Pero nagtitrain tayo,
Ganun
diba?
talaga. Nakakamiss din ng Pathfinder.
Oo, totoo.
Yan. So, syempre gusto ko rin i-recognize ang Pathfinder directors natin dati. Sila Ma'am Mayfort, sila Ma'am Love. Sana kung nasan man sila ngayon ay mabigyan sila ng good health ng ating Panginoon, Sister Carol.
Tama.
Ayan.
Nakakamiss yun, no, yung tayo-tayo nasa tent, tapos tayo-tayo din nagluluto. Ayan, di ba?
Yes. So, iba talaga yung training dito sa Pasig SDA Church. Pero anyway,
Tama.
Sister Caro, nakikita ko na ang mga nagsasagot. Atin na pong tingnan kung saan sila nag-camp.
Oo, saan ba? Saang lugar sila
Yes.
nag-camp?
At ang tamang sagot po ay sa may Ebenezer. Sa 1 Samuel 4 verse 1. Ayan. So, ang una po nakakuha ng tamang sagot, tama po ba ay si Sister Lizelle Sumagaysay?
Okay, tama
Okay.
daw.
Beside Ebenezer, okay na rin. Yan. So, si Sister Lizelle nakikisagot nito pero hindi niya naman alam yung
Opo.
Bible
Wag po
quiz.
kayong mag-alala dahil wala po si Sister Lizelle dito po sa
Yun,
Pasig at di po siya
okay.
umawak ng wala po siya sa technical team. Ayan.
Okay, ayan. So, next question, mga kapatid, question 7. How many men of Israel were killed on the battlefield by the Philistines? Gaano karami, Sister Carol?
Oh, so number to.
Number.
Ang
Hindi lang
ating
siya,
hinahanap.
bigyan natin silang clue. Hindi lang siya 2-digit number. Hindi lang siya tig 20.
Ayan, di siya
Yun.
ganon. Marami.
Ayan.
Siyempre naman din, Sister Biancs, no, hindi naman din pwedeng pagpupunta ka sa battle, sure ball na onti lang yung mamamatay sa
Hindi natin
kampo mo,
alam.
diba?
Ayan. So, happy Sabbath po kay... May nakita ako nag-greet.
Ayan, si Sister Win.
Ayan, si
Nob-
Sister Winnie Sartaguda, yung aming kasama sa bahay.
Ayun. Ay, happy Sabbath
Sabi niya,
po.
hashtag Happy Sabbath. May
Happy
hashtag pa yan. Oo.
Ayan, so happy Sabbath din sa mama mo, nanonood.
Yes, sana nga nanonood siya kasama si Sister Winnie. Ayan.
Parang magkahiwalay sila ng pwesto kasi
Oy, hindi ko rin
magkahiwalay sila
alam
ng
eh.
phone na gamit.
Siguro nga. Ayan, so Sister Carol, ang dami na agad sumasagot.
Tama, ang dami
Nagiging,
na.
ano na yung labanan ng quiz natin kasi ito na nga, Sister Carol. So, ilang tauhan or men yung namatay dun sa battle? Ayan. So,
There
ang
are?
sagot po ay... Yes, technical team, go.
Ayan,
Meron
merong
pong
4,000.
4,000.
Ayan, so ang dami din, no, Sister
Madami
Biancs?
talaga siya, Sister Carol. At ang una nakakuha ng tamang sagot ay si Sister Arlene. Wow!
Ayan.
Nakakahabol na si Sister Arlene.
Mukhang bumilis yung internet.
Yes.
Lumipat na ng pwesto si Sister Arlene. Kasi
Yes.
kanina, ang tagal niya bago makasagot eh. Ngayon, ano na siya.
Ayan. So, mga kapatid, paalala na kung sino yung may pinakamataas na accumulated scores from 1 Samuel 1 hanggang sa last chapter ng 1 Samuel. Siya po yung mananalo sa 1 Samuel na book. So, okay lang kahit 1 point lang kayo ngayon. Tapos next week naman, makaka 8 points kayo. Mataas na rin yun, Sister Carol, no?
At saka, Sister Bianca, meron tayong comprehensive exam,
Yes.
quiz. So, pag ginalingan nyo doon, pwede din makadagdag yun sa points nila, di ba,
Amen.
Sister Bianca?
Yun. So, yan na nga, humahabol na rin si Sister Arlene.
Ayan,
so,
so-
happy Sabbath din from Sister Debbie Sumagaysay. Napa-comment tuloy siya, narinig niya kasi yung shoutout natin.
Ayan. So, i-recap lang natin yung points.
Yes.
Meron ng 2 points
Si
si Sister Gertrudes, 3 points si Sister Makoy, tig 1 point si Sister Lizelle at saka si Sister Arlene.
Ayan. So, para sa ating 8 questions, sino ang makakakuha ng sagot? Sa ating 8 questions, Sister Carol, what were the names of the 2 men who died at the Ark of God as the Ark of God was captured? Ayan. So, sino
Ayan.
daw yung dalawang lalaking namatay?
Ayan. So, remind ko lang po, ito po ay 1 point lang po.
Yes, 1
And
point only and 2 answers in
In
1
one
comment.
comment. Ayan.
Nakakatito kasi kapag paisa-isa. Mga kapatid, 2 answers in
In
1
one
comment.
comment.
But it is only 1
One
point.
point. Ayan.
Ayan. So, hindi po to 2 points, mga kapatid, ha? Ayan. So, happy Sabbath po kay Kim Jillian Baltazar. Happy Sabbath from Malia SDA Church, Cavite Mission.
Happy Sabbath po
Yes.
sa inyo dyan.
Happy Sabbath po. Ayan, so ang dami na agad nagko-comment. Sister Carol, tingnan na natin.
Yan.
Ang
So, ang tamang sagot,
Ang tama pong sagot ay sila pala. Ang mga tamang sagot po ay sila Hophni
Hophni
at
and
Phinehas.
Ayan. So, alam ko ito yung name ng anak ni Ellie. Tama ba ako? Hindi ako nagkakamali. Yung pasaway.
Yes. Okay, at ang una po nakakuha ng tamang sagot ay si Sister Lizelle Sumagaysay. Tama po ba? Ayan.
Tama daw.
Si Hofty and Finehas. Ang dami nilang sumasagot din, no? Paunahan na lang
halatang
talaga to.
ang daming nagbasa at nag-aral ng
paunahan na lang talaga Sister Carol.
Tama.
Dun sa bilis ng internet.
Totoo.
Okay, so ninth question. Dahil excited na rin ako marinig ang mensahe mamaya ng ating speaker. Yes.
Ayan.
Ang ninth question, mga kapatid. Ang ninth question po natin is, how old was Ellie when he died?
Ayan.
Yun na lang. Simple lang siya, Sister Carol.
Siyempre, hindi naman dapat laging mahirap yung tanong.
Yes.
Dapat bigyan din natin ng mga
Gano'n
easy
siya katanda
question.
bago siya namatay, Sister Carol?
Ayan. Kasi madalas, di ba yung mga kilala natin sa Bible, sobrang haba ng mga buhay nila eh.
Oo.
Diba?
Sa atin
Hindi katulad ngayon, no?
Hindi natin alam kung kailan, lalo na ngayong pandemya. Ang dami na
Totoo.
talaga.
Kahit mga bata, hindi na exempted sa sakit.
Yes, kaya patuloy po tayong mag-ingat, mga kapatid.
Ayan.
Patuloy po tayong mag-stay at home. Wear your mask, social distancing, ano pa bang pinapromote?
Kumain syempre ng gulay at prutas para
kumain
lumakas
ng gulay
lalo yung
at
resistensya.
prutas. Ayan, so Sister Carol, nag-unahan talaga sila.
Totoo.
Yes,
Ayan,
ang tamang
dami.
sagot, Sister Carol, ay
98 years old. So, di ba, sobrang tanda niya.
Nakita ko pa dito, ang unang sagot ni Sister Gertrude si Badialor ay 9.
Siguro, nagmamadali talaga
Oo.
siya. Nakalimutan niyang pindutin yung kasamang number.
Yes. At ang tama po nakaunang sagot ay si
Si
Sister
Sister
Macoy
Macoy.
Torres. Ayan.
So, recap lang natin. Sister Macoy ay meron ng 4 points. Si Sister Gertrudes ay meron ng 2 points. Si Sister Lizelle ay meron na din 2 points. At si Sister Arlene ay 1 point.
Ayan. So sa ating last question, Sister Carol.
Ayan. Tingnan natin kung sino ang lalamang sa ating
Ayan.
quiz ngayon.
So number 10, Ellie fell backward from his seat and broke what part of his body?
Ayan. So, ito yung nag-cause kung bakit siya namatay.
At 98 years old.
Ayan,
Yon.
diba?
So, yon. Since nabasa na nila yan, syempre,
Oo.
kung ilang taon siya namatay. So,
Syempre,
ano yung
mababasa-
kinamatay niya, Sister Carol?
Mabasa na din nila yung kung paano siya namatay. Ayan.
Ayan. So, Sister Carol, tingnan na natin ang tamang sagot.
Ayan. So, ang tamang sagot ay, yung part po ay yung kanyang
Neck. Or ang
Ayan.
kanyang leeg. At ang una pong nakakuha ng tamang sagot ay si Sister Arlene Crisostomo.
Ayan.
Wow. Humabol siya.
Humabol.
Hinabol niya yung 2 points niya. Ayan.
Ayan.
So mga kapatid, kami po yung nagpapasalamat dahil patuloy niyo pong binabasa ang inyong mga Biblia at patuloy po kayo nagsasagot sa aming Bible quiz.
Ayan.
Ayan. So next Bible quiz po natin, Sister Carol.
Ay ang 1 Samuel 5-6.
Ayan, so make sure po na basahin po natin ito, mga kapatid, at magbasa po tayo, aralin po natin, at mag-participate po tayo sa ating Bible quiz every
Ayan. So mga
EY.
kapatid, wag po kayong magsawa kahit hindi po kayo yun nasa top notcher. Kasi wala naman po talaga sa interest namin na bigyan ng parang award yung mga top, kundi para po makapagbasa po talaga tayo ng ating Bible.
Ayan, okay. So Sister Carol, no, atin na po tayo mag-proceed sa ating special number before ang ating mensahe. Atin na pong pakinggan ang ating pong mga kabataan.
Sa sa Diyos mo ilaan. Huwag nang ipagpabukas pa. Kalooban niya ngayon'y gawin mo na. Matulin na lumilipas ang araw at oras. Baka abutan kang hindi handa. Matulin na lumilipas ang araw at oras. Baka abutan kang hindi handa. Baka abutan kang hindi handa.
Amen. Sister Bianca, amen.
Ang ganda ng awitin, Sister Carol, at mas nag-look forward ako sa magandang mensahe ding matatanggap natin ngayong hapon.
Tama, Sister Biang. So, bago natin ibigay ang time sa ating speaker, ayan, pakilala muna natin siya. So, ang ating speaker ngayon ay si Atty. Leslie Joie or LJ Babatuan. Isa po siyang Attorney 4 of DepEd Regional Office 4. Ayan. Ay, 7. And is also a senior partner of the law firm Babatuan, Capon, Barloso, and Mantos, where she specialized in labor, civil, and criminal law. Ayan.
Wow.
Tapos, alam mo ba, prior dito, bago siya maging attorney, ayan, siya ay nagkaroon din ng degree o nag-earn siya ng degree in industrial engineering. Ayan. So, hindi lang siya basta attorney, engineer din siya.
Engineer din siya,
ayan,
Sister
sa
Carol.
CIT University. She then took up law and completed her Bachelor of Law degree at the University of Cebu.
Ayan. At bukod doon sa napakagandang academic achievements niya, Sister Carol, ay siya din ay isang advocate ng children and women's rights and firm supporter of women empowerment. In short, Sister Carol, si Attorney LJ talaga ay isa sa pinaka-qualified na mag-speak sa atin ngayong hapon.
About sa topic natin,
yes, napakaganda
diba?
ng topic. Kaninang umaga pa natin naririnig yung meaningful message talaga ng
End it now.
End it now and yung advocacies niya. Pero ngayon, since continuation siya, as marami pa tayong matututunan galing kay attorney.
Tama.
Ayan, so ngayon ay ipibigay na natin ang oras para kay Attorney LJ. So Attorney LJ, nandyan po ba kayo?
Ayan.
Hello, good afternoon everyone. A pleasant Sabbath afternoon to our brothers and sisters of Pasig SDA Church. Give me a moment to set up my screen. I will be sharing my screen. Okay. Okay, so I hope my screen is visible to all. Once again, my warm and helpful Sabbath greetings to our brothers and sisters in Pasig SDA Church. I consider myself blessed to be given the chance to impart with you something that is also close to my advocacy. And before I proceed, the materials that I will be presenting are taken from the End Now packet. And these are not made by me, but by experts in this area. And I am just making use of the materials for this advocacy. So primarily, what I will be sharing with you this afternoon is somewhat a continuation of what was discussed earlier by Judge Judith, and also highlighting on the ills of pornography. So it is said that the home is the first school where education of the child is to begin. And here, with his parents as instructors, he is to learn the lessons that are to guide him throughout life. Lessons of respect, obedience, reverence, self-control. The educational influences of the home are a decided power for good or for evil. So, makikita po natin na everything, no matter how cliche this is, everything practically starts at home. And the most complicated and also the most crucial duty one has to perform in his or her lifetime is that of being a parent. I know maraming parents na nanonood or nakikinig ngayon, pinaka-importante po na duty or responsibility niyo sa buong buhay niyo ang pagiging parent. Can you imagine yung obligation niyo po or responsibility of giving physical, mental, and spiritual instruction to your children, training your children properly para morally fit and spiritually upright. The things have become even more difficult today. Mas challenging yung duty ng parents ngayon with the advances of technology. Why? Everything is practically accessible right at our fingertips. So bad influences have also easily penetrated homes, and the Christian home is not immune to that. Can you imagine children as young as 5 years old already have their gadgets and cell phones? My 3-year-old niece even has her own phone, and she knows how to navigate around YouTube. So, ang ills ng technology, technology has become like a double-edged sword, you know. So, it has added also to the challenges of the parents in rearing their children. I understand that you've already gone over the statistics of youth violence this morning, but it would be good to make a recap of it. So, once again, today's world is a dangerous place for our children and the youth to grow up. Everywhere we can see violence, bullying, and assault. Wherever we go, in whatever part of the globe, and more so in the Philippines. Number one tayo na users ng social media. And cyberbullying, bashing is also very rampant because we are so hooked and addicted into using social media, expressing ourselves freely. Minsan nakakalimutan na natin yung etiquette, and it has become also an avenue of hurting others or causing harm to others. Before we can explore the tangible ways to address this problem, we have to acknowledge or we have to have a clear grasp kung ano yung realidad sa buong mundo when it comes to statistics of violence. So I know that this was already discussed. Just looking at the figures, it's so overwhelming, no? 43% of the annual global homicides perpetrated by or against youth ages 10 to 29 years old. And most of the victims are male victims, 83% of that. And that's data from the World Health Organization. And this is on a global scale. I would have wanted to present data from the Philippines, no? But I was not able to secure such data. 1 in 9 girls experience sexual abuse or assault by an adult, and 1 in 53 boys experience sexual abuse or assault by an adult. 82% of all victims under age 18 are female. Girls ages 16 to 19 are 4 times more likely to be raped than the rest of the population, and 9 out of 10 rape victims are female. So, I need not expound kung ano yung ill effects of um, child sexual abuse, but it has a long-lasting effect on the victim's mental health. But before we go to that, there's another menace or societal problem that is also growing that needs to be talked about more. And we need to recognize it as well because it exists as a problem. Allow me to share some of the slides pertaining to this menace that I'm talking about. Please give me a few moments. So, the problem with porn, addiction, abuse, and affliction. They say it's harmless fun, but actually it's not. Pornography use causes physical, emotional, and psychological damage. Its endorphin releasing nature turns the viewer into a self-absorbed addict. Yes po, pornography can be addicting and it transforms the mind into something that is not what God designed. So, making a mockery of the beautiful gift of sex that God created through the use of pornography, marami po siyang adverse effects, not just to the mental health. You will later realize as we go along na isa din siya sa primary contributor ng violence and sexual abuse. So it is inherently violent and upholds depravity over mutual intimacy and has strong ties to human trafficking. New evidence proves that pornography strips romantic relationships of trust and fidelity and is one of the most common causes of failed marriages. So breaking free of the cycle is possible and freedom is just around the corner. So we cannot ignore it anymore, itong pornography. It has become rampant across all demographics, men and women of all ages. And it has not stopped even at church doors. Kasi penetrated din ng pornography even the Christian homes. Silence and shame only perpetuate the cycle and we cannot be silent about it anymore. So, sino ang nakanood na ng porn? Siyempre, walang aamin, di ba? But statistically, and this is a global study, the average age of exposure to pornography is 11 years old. But I doubt that with the advancements of technology now, at pabata ng pabata yung age na nagkakaroon ng access to technology and websites, even as young as 11 years old, I believe, my exposure na to pornography and lewd views and sites. Can you imagine 68 million daily searches for porn? That's on a daily basis. 47% of Christians, 47% of homes or Christian homes admit that porn is a major problem. And 1 out of 3 women use it regularly. These are overwhelming numbers. And porn is not just a harmless hobby. Sasabihin ng iba, I am just looking at it. I'm not doing anything bad. The consequences are actually detrimental. What does porn addiction look like, and how do you know that you are now addicted or hooked into porn? You keep increasing the periods of time you spend watching porn. You feel like watching porn makes you feel high, or it serves as something that fixes your troubles. It makes you feel good, or it makes you feel better. And then afterwards, you feel guilty about the consequences of viewing pornography. And then you spend hours perusing online porn sites even if it means you are neglecting self-care or responsibilities. And then you insist that your romantic or sexual partners watch porn with you. You feel you're unable to enjoy sex without first watching porn. You feel you're unable to resist the urge to watch porn. There's less satisfying sexual life. There are relationship issues, engagement in risky behavior to watch porn. So what happens when you're clicking? Parang click ka lang ng click, di ba? Browsing. A 2016 study examined the MRI brain scans of porn viewers, and it showed enhanced activity in the part of the brain that plays a key role in decision making and reward related behavior. So the same siya ng effect sa brain when you are satisfied or gratified with a reward. The brain releases dopamine. So the reward center is activated. And when you experience that reward, your brain responds by releasing dopamine, and essentially, it reinforces the notion that you need to watch more and you want more of that reward. So, these changes in the brain build new maps for sexual simulation, and over time, the previously established maps are no longer able to compare to ones being watched by porn viewing. So, can you imagine? Nag-iiba yung map ng utak mo. It is even said that the gray matter in your brain is also parang minimized or greatly affected. So the reward center is activated when we accomplish this goal. And then, yun nga, satisfying siya. And then you become motivated to want more and more of it. And over time, your brain becomes desensitized to do these dopamine hits. So the brain changes itself. It is no longer accustomed to the one's pure and holy thoughts. Since you get accustomed to these things, parang normal na sa'yo and you become accepting of it. And then you continually search for this kind of high. The more dopamine hits you get, and in turn, the more likely you will watch it over and over again. Changes in the brain build new maps for sexual stimulation, and then established maps are no longer there. So think of it like this: when you build up a tolerance to a drug, you need to increase your intake of that drug. Parang, yes, a drug. Kapag nagkaroon ka daw ng tolerance sa drug, kailangan taasan mo na yung dosage or intake mo of that drug for it to work, or para you get satisfied. So yun din yung effect ng watching porn. A porn viewer may need to perpetually progress to increasingly explicit content to experience the same level of excitement. So the addiction to porn literally changes your brain. You tend to have problems at work and with carrying out matters of daily living. The more hours per week someone uses pornography, the less gray matter volume they have in their brain. Yung gray matter natin is primarily responsible for our memory, and the less we have of that, we are prone to Alzheimer's. So, nagiging makakalimutin. In addition, connected tissues that are associated with a healthy brain functioning begin to deteriorate with increasing hours of use. Among adolescents age 12 to 16, pornography addiction impairs verbal memory. So this is the cycle of addiction. Normally daw, addiction can happen within 8 weeks. It may begin with a simple curiosity. But as you experience the effects of the dopamine, yung activated chemical in our reward center sa utak natin, you become absorbed. And then the more you look, the more you want. And soon, you find yourself needing to watch it regularly. And just like a drug, The viewer builds up a tolerance and needs more, and what began as a curiosity turns into an addiction and is usually accompanied by shame. So ito yung cycle of addiction. Curiosity, absorption, dependence, tolerance, and then shame. So people become a means to an end. Over time, pornography creates an obsession with looking at people rather than interacting with them. So parang na-objectify natin yung people and nasa-sexualize. They become mere objects rated by size, shape, and harmony of parts, not a whole being. As the fantasy world becomes the norm, the viewer begins to fear true intimacy. There are others become objects to be judged, sexualized, pursued, hunted. Some examples are voyeurism, desensitization, objectification. Let us watch this short video about the experience of somebody who is hooked deeply into porn. Allow me to play the video. I'm sorry.
Pwede po pa-share ng audio.
The audio. Paano ba? The video. Wait lang.
Sa may panel po ng share, I think may share computer audio po.
Okay, I'll have to start over with the video. Walang narinig at all kanina?
Wala.
Sige. Oh, okay. That's so sad. Sige, let's start again.
I told myself
Okay na?
that it wasn't all that bad. Boy, was I wrong.
Yes po. Okay.
There I am, everybody's best friend, beautiful wife, 3 kids. From the outside, it looked good, except for the secret part that nobody knew about. One that carried, in my mind, no risk. Pornography hooked me deep. I knew I would be back. Whatever risk I would have to take, whatever price I would have to pay, I would be back. Porn took me places I never thought I would go. It groomed me, trained me, set me up. So I'm just driving along and I see this girl. I pull over to offer her a ride and she propositioned me. And suddenly I'm picking up my first prostitute on my way to a Christmas Eve service. I'd been hiding my porn use for a long time and thought I could hide it forever. And then one night, my wife caught me. I vowed again, I promised once again to stop, and I explained and I begged, and she forgave me. But when a few weeks later she found that condom on the floor in the bathroom that I couldn't quite explain, she finally said the words that she needed to say and the words that saved my life. She said, "I'm done." She said, "I still love you, but I don't like you. I don't trust you. I don't respect you. And I don't think you can ever change." That was it for me. That was my wake-up call from fantasy and infidelity. It hurt to hear my wife say she didn't like me anymore. It was as though there was a part of me that died. I'd reached the point where I actually believed that I had become an unlovable person. It was that moment that I finally became willing to do something I'd never been willing to do before. Come clean. And not just with her, but with somebody else, and with God. I had to surrender to a Christian recovery program. They made me understand that I could only experience healing to the depth that I'm willing to confess and repent. I dreaded it at the beginning, but I confessed everything. I had to leave my isolated world behind. I wanted a private solution to my private problem. And he loved me too much to give it to me. The intimacy I was always looking for, I couldn't find until I was willing to bring my real self into the relationship with God. My wife and I are closer than we've ever been. She didn't tell me until just a few years ago that every night after I fell asleep, she would put her hand on my chest and pray for me. That God would make me into the man that I was supposed to be. I know God heard those prayers. If you will just bring your real self and walk openly with other people, you can experience true intimacy with God and others.
Okay, so that was the experience of Nate, who was deeply hooked in porn, and thankfully he was able to transform his life and um, go back to God with the help of his prayerful wife. So, one of the consequences of pornography is abuse, the inherent violence of porn. You may think pornography is not hurting anybody, but let's take a closer look at the numbers. 45% of scenes in online pornography include at least one act of physical aggression, like spanking, gagging, slapping, hair pulling, and choking. These are 5 of the most common forms of physical aggression. In pornography with aggression, women are the target in 97% of the scenes, and their response to aggression was either neutral or positive and rarely negative. Men were perpetrators of aggression against women in 76% of scenes. Boys who have seen violent pornography are over twice as likely to report committing sexual violence and physical violence against a dating partner. Remember what I said earlier about how it changes the maps in your brain? So, boys who are into pornography are also more likely to hurt their partners. Girls who have seen violent pornography are more likely to experience sexual violence also from their dating partners. And among those who have seen rough sex in pornography, 91% wanted to take part in such behaviors, and 82% had taken part in at least one of such behaviors. Both pornography and alcohol consumption are unique predictors of sexual assault, victimization for college females. The combined effect of pornography and alcohol dramatically increases the odds of victimization. And one reason for this is that pornography minimizes sexually aggressive acts. So I have a long list of statistics here, data which point to the fact that pornography is not harmless because one of the consequences would be to encourage or cause someone hooked into it to perpetuate or perform violent acts such as rape and hurting their partners. Rape porn has been seen by 21% of men and 11% of women. Men's consumption of pornography, particularly violent pornography, is associated with more aggressive behavior toward female partners. So objectified usually yung mga babae, and nawawala yung respeto towards women by the men who are into porn. And women who are also into porn, surprisingly, are comfortable with it or also accepting of it. So women who use pornography are more likely to commit non-consensual sexual activity, particularly using emotional manipulation and deception of their male partners. So mahaba po ang statistics or numbers na nandito, and I cannot go over each one of them. But the fact remains that pornography is not harmless. And a positive response to violence in pornographic films promotes a dehumanizing and aggressive idea of sexual behavior. Like I said, na-objectify yung women or person because of pornography. And it's not just, no, we can skip this video.
This is Anna. Wait, don't click to someone else yet because Anna's stuck here on your computer screen. And while you can walk away, her image is stuck on the internet. See, your fantasy is Anna's nightmare. There's a good chance recruiters lured her with flattery. Perhaps they baited her with cash. Maybe they even tranquilized her with date rape drugs. And if Anna's like many others, she stays sedated with alcohol, weed, or coke to numb the pain. Chances are she faces STDs and HIV because she's denied access to protection. We don't know what she's been through because we only see Anna smiling. and they keep showing Anna smiling so that you'll keep watching. See, pornography is integral to human trafficking and prostitution. In 9 countries, almost half, 49%, said that pornography was made of them while they were in prostitution. This generation fights sex trafficking more than anyone ever has, and more than anyone ever has, this generation consumes porn. Fighting human trafficking and then watching porn is like protesting a corrupt politician and then donating to his campaign. You browse privately going from Anna to Zoe and back to Anna. Watch your favorite fantasy and then walk away. But Anna's still there. She's stuck there, stuck in this life because you click. Each click, each link, each URL visit and play button, this is the currency of porn. This is the price of Anna's life. The $100 billion pornography industry is fueling the appetite for children as well. Teenage girls now make up the biggest slice of viewable porn, which by definition is considered trafficking. The demand for porn fuels the trafficking industry, and you can take away that demand. You can cut the cord on this machine. You can bankrupt the system. You can empty the pimp's pockets. You can free Anna by simply refusing to click.
Okay, now, sino ang nakapanood ng 50 Shades of Grey or nakabasa ng book na ito? It has gained a very huge following among teenagers and particularly females, no? Yung 50 Shades. And sadly, even Christian women have expressed their adoration over the characters of the book and the story. And this is what it teaches these young people actually. Hollywood teaches that this kind of behavior is normal and attractive. Ito yung storyline ng 50 Shades. Affections can be bought, and the more money spent, the more control earned in a relationship. Stalking and controlling behaviors are gestures of affection instead of red flags. Possessiveness is also loving, especially when manipulation is involved. It's romantic to ignore or enjoy the pain of others for personal pleasure. It's acceptable for sex to be used as a weapon, and coercion and force aren't abusive so much as they are expressions of desire. Wealth and success coupled with a tortured past means an abusive relationship is acceptable, and it'll even be called the love story of the decade. Can you imagine being a love story when in fact it's a story of abuse and control and manipulation? Nagiging twisted na yung definition ng love, and women are swooning for these kind of stories already. And we need to be careful about it, which brings me to my other point. Yung pornography is not just through access in particular websites or porn sites. Even the books that are without regulation, na romance novels na nabibili ng young girls, may mga sexually explicit content din. And may mga bad influences and twisted definition of how love should be. So we should also watch out for that, parents, if we have teenagers or children who are into reading these kinds of materials. So the affliction, there will be depression, shame, and destruction. Nothing good comes out of pornography. Only personal destruction. You need to keep that in mind. There are emotional consequences such as isolation and shame, fake intimacy and loneliness, lethargy and depression, and also relational consequences. Affected yung relationship mo with your spouse or your partners and with all those around you. There are also sexual consequences where it is applicable for married couples. And spiritual consequences, more importantly. You will always have that feeling of guilt One common justification seeks to plead innocence for pornography use by claiming it only affects the person using it. In some ways, this scenario is more plausible than ever before. Pero, you know deep in your heart that it changes you and your interaction and your relationship with others. It does not just affect you as a personal, as an individual. You reap what you sow. And the Apostle Paul told the Ephesian church that they ought to put off their former way of life because it was being corrupted through its deceitful desires. Ephesians 4:18. He also told the Galatians to diligently fight against sowing to the flesh, because he that sows to his flesh, lower nature or sensuality, will from the flesh reap decay and ruin and corruption. Galatians 6:8. When a person sows to his lower nature by watching pornography, kasi lower form debased nature yan eh, he sows a great degree of moral corruption into his spiritual life, and he is bound to reap the nasty spiritual consequences. Some will reap the corruption of an increasingly explosive temper. Magiging temperamental. Others harvest a general apathy toward life and show no healthy desire to take care of themselves or fulfill their responsibilities. Others bear the fruit of depression, anxiety, eating disorders. It is not difficult to see how this will affect other people. Whenever anything doesn't go his way at home, a person who is hooked into pornography lashes out at his wife and children. So, people who are addicted to pornography are unable to see the changes that are taking place in their personalities, their emotions, and their characters. So the Word of God tells us that we are created in Christ Jesus to do good works which God prepared in advance for us to do. Ephesians 2:10. However, Jesus qualifies this statement by saying that just as a branch is unable to produce fruit by itself unless it remains on the vine, so neither can you unless you remain in me. A person who is regularly indulging in pornography is cutting himself off from the spiritual influence of Jesus, the heavenly vine. If the person is not completely spiritually dead already, he or she is extremely sick. Take note of this. Secret sins and corrupt influences eventually steal away the power that should be available to everyone who does God's work in the earth. So, how many young men and women have been called to take a stand for righteousness in their schools or workplaces, but their morals have been eroded to such a great degree, and they have no real testimony of Christ and his truth? On the other hand, there are some that get involved in pornography and also in full-time ministry and must force themselves to go through the motions of ministry, and then may kinikimkim or may mga tinatago pala. God may choose to bless other people through their ministry, and there will most certainly come a time when they will either be exposed or they will simply quit. Secret sins and corrupt influences steal away the power that should be available to everyone who does God's work in the earth. That needs to be emphasized. There's toxic shame. These are some and mostly consequences of pornography. But the good thing is there is hope, and freedom is right around the corner. You can overcome it by retraining your brain, by overcome shame. First, you acknowledge the shame of the addiction, but don't let it define you. Be vulnerable and move toward others. Know the false promise of porn. Beware of the blame game. Shame quickly can turn to blame, and you blame yourself for your actions, but you use this as an excuse to continue the habit. Avoid deflecting responsibility with statements like, of course, I do bad things because I'm a bad person. I can't help it. It's not my fault. This is who I am, and I can never change. Avoid negative self-talk. Replace the lies with the truth. Once you have identified the lies, the ill effects of porn, you can replace those lies with truth. For example, instead of the lie of being worthless, you are in fact deeply loved by God, as promised and as can be read in Romans 5:8. So, retrain your brain. It is possible to retrain your brain. Like A, B, C, activating event or stressor or trigger situation. B for belief or thoughts and feelings about the stressor. And C, the consequence or results caused by our belief. So, parang ABC lang daw. Look for patterns or common themes in your thinking, and these distorted thought patterns would create channels in the brain and making it easier to continue to believe them. Step back and evaluate your thought patterns. Observe how your mind runs, how your mind thinks, and train it to think differently, retrain it. I think, therefore I am. Everything that goes is feeding you or depleting you. Be transformed by the renewing of your minds, says Romans 12:2. And think about what you think about. You can be the air traffic controller of your mental airport. So be very cautious about what goes on inside your mind, because that's where the real battlefield is. The mind is a very powerful um, um, tool for good or evil, and it is up to you kung ano yung ipino-fuel mo sa loob ng utak mo, and kung ano yung minamagnify mo always sa utak mo. The lifespan of an emotion is 90 seconds. So what keeps emotions going are the stories we tell ourselves about them. So self-talk is very important. Positive self-talk. Recognize, reveal, and restore. There is no shame in getting help, and healing is found in recognizing the problem, calling it by name, and finding restoration in the grace of God. At the end of the day, for as long as you are willing to acknowledge that something is wrong and you need help and you are willing to change, you can overcome. So, I would just like to go back in closing to the emphasis that I made earlier about the importance of the training which starts in the home. Because the home is the first school where the education of the child is to begin. The duties of parents, very important po ang role ng parents in molding the children. Kaya nga in one of Ellen White's writings, if I'm not mistaken, it says na there is some sort of ceremony or recognition for faithful and prayerful mothers. I don't know kung bakit mothers lang, but ganun po ka-importante yung being prayerful natin mga parents, na hindi naman kasi bantay sarado, or we cannot watch over our children 24/7. So for the time that we are not with them, or we are not looking or watching over them, our prayers would do wonders. So I guess that would be all for my sharing this afternoon about the ills of pornography, and I hope that I was able to substantially impart to our brothers and sisters. Thank you so much.
Amen. Ayan, napakaganda ng mensahe ngayon, Sister Carol, no?
Tama, Sister Bianx.
Maganda na cover ng Pasig SDA Church yung parang whole topic ng advocacies ng End It Now. Kasi since kaninang umaga ay napag-usapan niyo about sa abuse, yan, yung sa family. Ngayon naman, Sister Carol, napag-usapan naman yung about sa pornography.
Tama, Sister Bianx.
Ayan. So,
parang medyo mabigat yung topic pero sobrang ganda
yes,
naman.
maganda siya itakal, lalo na sa ating kabataan ngayon, lalo na ngayon sa mga youth, sa mga Adventist youth. Kasi isa siya sa mga topics na pag narinig parang ayaw i-discuss or para bang na-awkwardan sila. Ayaw nilang harapin kasi feeling nila hindi siya appropriate sa ating mga Adventists.
Yes,
pero
tama.
little do they know is kahit yung mga Adventists hindi excused sa mga ganyang addiction or mga ganyang problems.
Ayan, so Sister Bianca, parang kanina yung pinakatumatak sa akin doon is yung saan ba nagsisimula yung pagiging addict sa porn? Di ba nagsimula daw yun sa pagiging curious mo sa bagay? So parang, di ba parang simple na ano ba to? Ano bang mapapanood ko dito? Ano bang makikita ko dito? Tapos di natin namamalayan sa simpleng bagay lang na yun na ang akala natin once lang is pwede pa palang maging addict tayo sa bagay na
Yung
yun.
nga, Sister Carol. And yung nabanggit din ni attorney kanina is, hindi naman talaga nasusubaybayan ng mga magulang ang kanilang mga anak 24/7.
Tama, Sister
Kaya yun,
Bianca.
Sister Carol and attorney, may nag-message po sa amin, PM. Nahiya sigurong mag-comment dun sa live. Tinanong niya, besides daw sa prayer, is ano daw yung mga measures or ways kung paano mapiprevent ng mga magulang yung pornography. Kasi isa sa mga naging concerns nila, kapag daw na-expose kasi yung bata, ganyan, baka magtuloy-tuloy na. Paano ba yun mapipigilan ng magulang?
Tama,
Ayan.
Sister
So,
Bianca.
attorney, nagets po ba yung question? Ayan. So share daw some ways on how we can prevent their children from watching pornography.
Okay. What I think would be best is to set up controls or restrictions sa mga websites na ina-access, like sa internet natin sa bahay. Pwede man natin iset yung settings. I'm not very techy, but I know it can be done na may mga restrictions na dapat kid or teen-friendly lang yung mga sites na na-access. And also, possibly also we can limit the screen time, especially now that virtual yung classes, and yung screen time ng mga bata is mas hyped than usual. We can impose controls na for school lang, and then may schedule. Depende sa ating creativity yun kung paano natin ma-impose yung discipline sa mga bata na hindi sila malulong sa screen. Actually, nasa exposure kasi yan exposure talaga, and you will never know what could pop up. Sometimes may mga pop-ups talaga even sa YouTube. May mga unwanted na mga ads or pop-ups, and you have to do something about it na hindi siya ma-access basta-basta ng mga bata.
Kasi yung contribution ng social media
Tama,
dun
Sister
sa
Bianx.
nakikita ng mga bata ngayon, lalo na yun nga, di ba, maganda rin, although, syempre, kapag pinagbawalan kasi yung isang bata, syempre, yung iba magwawala. Ano ba yan? I hate mommy and daddy,
Tama.
ganyan. Pero usually, yung ginagawa nilang yun is a measure or a way para ma-prevent sila to see things that are not to be seen not to be seen talaga kasi yun nga kung ano-ano naman kasi talaga yung pwedeng makita ng bata sa social media.
Tama, Sister Bianx.
So kailangan talaga ng patnubay at gabay na magulang.
Ayan, so yun sinabi ni attorney, no, yung
Yes.
parang kailangan i-limit natin yung mga sites na nakita. Alam ko na minsan nakokontrol yun kapag mga, kapag mga bata pa yung gagamit talaga ng mga phone. Alam ko pwedeng i-control yun lalo na sa YouTube. Diba may
Yes.
YouTube for kids para pambata lang
Yes.
talaga yung mga napapanood nila.
Lalo na ngayon, Sister Carol and attorney, alam naman natin na bawal lumabas ang mga bata.
Ayan.
Lalo na pandemic, hindi sila pwedeng makipaglaro sa labas at i-enjoy ang kanilang pagbabata. Kasi nung tayo, yung paglalaro natin dati, tumbang preso, Chinese garter,
Totoo.
ano pa ba, diba? Wala
Parang
tayong-
laging outdoor tayo.
Oo, lagi tayong naka-phone. Kaya siguro yun nga talaga yung differences natin, lalo na ngayon na walang ibang pwedeng magawa yung mga magulang para ma-entertain yung kids nila sa bahay. And isa yung sa mga pwede nilang gawin is yun nga, panoorin na lang sila ng mga video sa YouTube.
Ayan. So, sabi dito ni Ma'am Pot, ayan, child safe proofing yung net, sabing ganon. So, may settings ata na ganon pagdating sa
Yes.
net.
Okay, so Sister Carol, may mga katanungan pa ba?
Ayan. So, meron dito. Ayan. So, may tanong po dito. Ayan. Ewan ko kung nakapinto, pero yung Pasig yung nag-type. Sabi, anong role ng DepEd para matulungan ng mga school children against the pre-list of pornography?
Or
Ayan.
perils of
Perils.
pornography.
Ayan. So, dadagdag ko na
attorney,
rin.
no? Attorney din siya ng DepEd.
Oo, attorney siya ng
Yes.
DepEd. Sabi ko nga sa'yo kanina, di ba nakita ko yung picture niya, parang namumukhaan ko siya kasi minsan yung mga seminar sa school namin, parang may mga ini-invite na taga DepEd, pero hindi ako sure kung si attorney yun, ganun.
Okay. So, Sister Carol, pwede pa ulit-ulit ng question?
So,
Para kay
ayun po,
attorney?
anong role ng DepEd para matulungan ng mga school children against the pre-list of pornography?
Against the perils of pornography.
Ayan.
Ayan.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for the question. Wow, parang ano. Anyway, sa DepEd kasi, we have trained our teachers to observe children, no? They are trained to profile children, observe the behaviors, kung ano yung risks possibly na ini-experience ng bata. We have what we call children at risk, and they are profiled based on background and behavior. So, may referral mechanisms po tayo, may intervention programs po tayo na ginagawa, and they are trained also to do counseling. As to pornography naman, especially like I said, since exaggerated yung use ng virtual space ngayon because of online classes, our teachers are also trained to impose measures na protected talaga yung online space ng kanilang classes, na strictly for discussion lang, and then may etiquette sila na ino-observe, may orientation kung ano yung acceptable language at hindi. And day in and day out, children are reminded of what they are supposed to do and how to behave in the online or virtual platform. So may ground rules po yan. May DepEd order po na sinusunod on how to conduct the online classes, and si teacher is accordingly trained for that. So, not just our teachers, pati si parents, no? Parents are also educated during orientation. If they opt for online classes, the parents are also given proper orientation on how to handle yung online or virtual platforms, or how to assist their children in these online classes.
Thank you po, attorney. So, ayan yan, no? So, bilang educator ka talaga, Sister Carol, educator, ayan.
Ayan.
Isa talaga sa mga trainings ng pagiging teacher, hindi lang talaga sila nagfo-focus sa classes nila or kung paano nila madisiplina yung kanilang class as a whole, but also, may mga ganyan din pala silang mga pinag-aaralan.
Totoo.
No?
Sobrang dami na namin ding seminar within this week kasi di ba magpa-practice teaching na kami. And
Yes.
most of that, pinag-uusapan talaga kung paano kami magdi-deal within online class. Kung paano namin paano namin hahawakan yung klase namin, mga estudyante namin. Kasi sobrang hirap talaga nowadays. Kasi nga, di ba, di naman natin sila nakikita eh.
Yes.
Mas mahirap obserbahan yung mga bata ngayon pagdating sa klase. Kasi 'di ba sabi nga natin pangalawang tahanan yung school, pero ngayon hindi nga natin sila maobserbahan ng physically kasi tas minsan pag sa online naka-off sila ng camera, minsan through chat lang din. So, meron talagang mga rules or yung mga dapat nating gawin bilang teacher tsaka yung dun sa DepEd na tinuturo.
Yes. So, ang dami talagang risk din ngayon sa pandemic, no? Ang dami din sigurong na added risks about sa pornography. Kasi, dagdag din yung online classes nga sa exposure din nila sa internet. Lalo na, kunwari, sinasabi mo nga na hindi naka-off yung camera, hindi mo alam kung nakikinig, natutulog, or may ibang pinapanood, di ba?
Totoo.
Ayan. So, kailangan talaga ng mga magulang i-monitor yung pag-aaral ng kanilang mga anak, no? Kasi
Yeah.
baka iba na pala yung pinag-aaralan, delikado na yun,
Totoo, Sister
Carol.
Bianx, yung parang sabihin man, may
Yes.
klase ako, tas nasa kwarto niya, nagkaklase. Akala mo nagkaklase lang, yung pala hindi na.
So, ang dami pala talaga. So, Sister Carol, no, ang dami talagang, pasensya na, attorney. Maganda kasi yung topic mo ngayon. So, ang daming nagtatanong. Hindi ko alam. Kasi may nagpi-PM din sa akin. Pero eto naman, ito yung next question, attorney, is related naman sila sa isa't isa. So, may nagtanong po dito. Sabi niya, attorney, tanong ko lang kung meron din ba connection ang palagi panonood ng telenovela. Tapos, dinagdagan ni Attorney June, sabi niya, may mga torrid kissing scenes ang ibang mga telenovela na minsan nag-lead sa mga bata na papunta sa pornography. Meron ba magagawa ang DepEd tungkol dito? Ayan, so, grabe
Parang
yung...
naka-address na kagad sa DepEd.
Yes, parang pinadalang representative si attorney from DepEd.
Tama.
Ganon. Ayan. So, attorney, ano pong masasabi niyo po doon?
Okay, so, ano nga ulit yun? Anong pwedeng gawin ni DepEd sa mga kissing scene ng telenovela? Ano nga?
Parang same lang din.
Parang sabi po doon kung yung palaging panonood daw po ng
Sa
telenovela
telenovela.
is
Opo.
ano tawag na ito, parang mauhook ka din na pumunta or mahook ka sa pornography.
Okay. Precisely, no? Grabe talaga yung influence ng media and the shows, the kind of shows that we watch on TV. So, yung mga kissing scenes, it all starts with that, and then curiosity would grow, and then, like I said kanina sa discussion, something as seemingly harmless as that, mag-grow siya because of curiosity, and you would want to search for more and more. So, it is likely possible na yung mga ganyan, mga sexually loaded material, pwede siyang maka-influence talaga sa mind. Depende sa age ng person na nanonood, no? That's why we have to kailangan gabayan yung mga bata kung anong klaseng shows yung pinapanood. Yung mga kissing scenes sa telenovela, even not just kissing scenes, even the violence and yung mga awayan and favorite theme sa telenovela, yung mga revenge and yung parang ang sarap panoorin yung inaapi tapos she takes revenge against her enemies, ganon. These influences would create significant changes in the brain, and it affects the person's mind and character. So as Christians, kailangan din nating gabayan or bantayan yung quality of the shows and the materials, not just the shows, but also the books that our children have access to. as to DepEd, DepEd can only do so much. Like I said, everything starts at home. Si DepEd ay secondary lang. Kung ano yung hindi magawa ni parents sa bahay, ay pwedeng punan sa school. And the Department of Education is doing the best that it can to protect our children. As a matter of fact, we have what we call the zero tolerance policy against child abuse. So, very strict and very keen sa DepEd to protect our children. Nagiging controversial na nga yan na topic because our teachers are against it. Kasi sabi nila, nagiging sutil yung mga bata. Paano nagiging sutil? Kasi under DO40 or the Child Protection Policy, bawal talaga na saktan yung bata, taasan ng boses, or yung usual na discipline before na nakalakhan natin na pinapalo pa nga tayo ng mga teachers natin. Before, that's acceptable and that's okay. Now, it is no longer acceptable. So, controversial yan because the teachers would say, nagiging sutil yung mga bata and we are scared to impose discipline because we are subject to administrative cases. Bigla-bigla na lang may nagsusue for child abuse because napagsabihan or napagtaasan ng boses yung bata. So, that's something that is also for discussion considering na iba na kasi yung environment ng mga bata ngayon. So, we have to take into consideration the fact na iba na talaga yung mga bata ngayon because of the influences surrounding them. So, we cannot do it alone. Hand in hand talaga yan eh. Cliche na, but it takes a village to raise a child. So the home, the community, the school, the teachers, everybody, hand in hand talaga dapat nagtutulungan para yung quality of children that we bring into society are good and pleasing before God.
Amen.
Ayan.
Ayan.
So, tama talaga si attorney sa sinabi niya na hindi lang about sa mga sexual scenes yung napapanood sa telenovela, kundi yung theme din. Kasi, Sister Carol naman, napapansin mo ba, lahat ng mga nagiging telenovela, it's all about revenge, kabit, mga violence, or mga baril-baril, kidnapping, ang
Totoo
dami-dami.
na, Sister Bianx.
Yes.
Ang dami ng ganong mga palabas. So, hindi lang dapat tayo tinitingnan natin yung part na yung kissing scene kasi magiging pornography, kundi
Yes.
pati din yung mga crime na napapaka-and
Yes.
abuse kasi pwede rin gayahin ng mga bata, di ba?
Amen. Ayan.
Ayan, so meron pa akong isang na-take doon na sabi nga ni ma'am, parang secondary lang yung DepEd. So, dapat nag-i-start
Sa home
sa home.
talaga.
So, bago natin palabasin or bago natin isabak sa labas yung mga anak natin, is na-train talaga natin ng maayos. Kasi nga, lalo na ngayon, meron yung Protection Act, yung parang protection para sa mga bata. Mahirap na din na kami, yung mga teacher or yung taga-DepEd na magsaway. So, dapat minsan, sa mga parents o nasa bahay is, gawin na natin yung part na binigay ng Panginoon, which is yung train up a child, di ba?
Yes, okay. Ayan, so sorry attorney, siguro may mga
Tanong pa po.
last two questions na siguro to,
Ayan.
attorney. Pasensya.
So, eto po, may question po dito, galing po kay Sister Ruth, sabi niya po, paano po i-approach or appropriate advice ang isang individual na nag-umpisa na nagkaroon ng porn addiction na hindi siya ma-intimidate or mapahiya?
Okay. Paano ba? So, ina-acknowledge naman niya na there's something wrong with his behavior, no? With assuming na he acknowledges or he accepts that there's something wrong with his behavior. Ang best approach niyan is, for me personal opinion ko lang ito, hindi naman ako expert sa mga bagay na ganito, no? But if I were the person in the position na pwedeng matulungan yung tao na alam kong may problems with pornography, first is I'll pray about it. And then secondly, I would not address the problem or confront the person right away. Instead, I would try to divert his or her attention. For example, if that is a friend and he nagkukulong always sa kwarto or hindi lumalabas, pwede ko naman kumustahin, and then I'll start with wholesome conversations or topics para ma-touch or ma-move siya. And then eventually, pag nagawa mo na yun, and then nakita mo na may willingness naman or open naman to wholesome and godly discussion, then maybe very gently and subtly, you can bring up the problem of pornography, pero in private. And mahinahon, and hindi yung accusing or blaming or something like you make the person feel bad about himself or herself. Yung approach is dapat encouraging. Sasabihin mo there's hope, sasabihin mo you can actually change your habits, and there's forgiveness, and God will be willing to accept you for as long as you repent and you are willing to change. So yan lang po yung personal ko na take on that.
And so thank you, attorney, for that very considerate answer.
Ayan.
Kasi siguro yung iba magiging strong na, bakit ka addict sa ganyan?
Oo,
Ganun.
di ba?
Magbago ka na, ganon. So, it's not a good approach para maiwasan yung individual ma-intimidate or mahiya. So, thank you, attorney, for
Kailangan
that.
talaga no, yung maayos na pakikiusap. And syempre, samahan talaga ng prayer kasi hindi talaga natin kayang i-deal ng tayo lang yung mga ganung bagay. Kasi
Yes.
syempre, mahirap talaga i-approach yun na sabi mo na, kapatid, parang ganyan,
Yes,
parang hirap.
and
So, kailangan
also-
natin ng tulong ng
Yes,
Panginoon.
and also, di ba, change comes from within. Yung Holy Spirit na talaga yung touch ng hearts ng kapatiran natin kapag nahihirapan na siya. Ayan. So, eto na, attorney, siguro probably the last question. And siguro ito din yung pinaka-interesting. Ang sabi po dito is, yung implementation po ba, attorney, ng sex education sa high school students, ano po bang stand natin as Adventists doon? Is it for awareness or for exploitation daw po? Ayan.
Okay. There are no talks yet about the implementation of sex education in high school, no? But yung approach kasi nila, from what I've heard, is scientific daw yung pag-i-educate ng children. Parang biology class yung approach. So, we are yet to see how that goes or how it's done. Kasi nasa ano yan designers of the curriculum yan. Sa DepEd kasi maraming departments, maraming sections or units which are tasked on these matters. Now, as Adventists, sex education, ako ang personal ko na take dyan is, for as long as it's scientific yung approach, no, hindi naman malaswa yung pagkaka-present ni teacher, and yung curriculum well-prepared naman yan Hindi naman yan designed to trigger mga sexual na thoughts or kung ano-ano man, di ba? Hirap naman sagutin ang tanong na yan. Kasi controversial talaga yan Controversial talaga yung sex education. Also, the Philippines is a very conservative country, but with the K-12 implementation, we're also somehow breaking free of that and aligning our education system with the global standards. Diba? Yung K-12 is our step into aligning with the global education system para yung learners natin ay at par with the education system with the rest of the world. And soon, I know it could be implemented, or these changes, in order to align with the global standards in education, these changes would be introduced in the Philippine setting. And ang stricture lang natin dyan of protection is that may mga tao naman na nagre-review dyan. Like I said, yung curriculum is designed naman in a way na holistic pa din yung pag-i-educate natin sa ating children. No one wants na mapapasama yung mga bata. Nobody, not a single person from DepEd would want na hindi maganda yung ituturo natin sa mga bata, di ba? So as Adventists, i-reinforce natin, bantayan natin kung ano yung quality of education na natatanggap ng ating mga bata. And it's also part of our duty to check ano ba yung mga tinuturo ng teacher sa school nila. Mayroon tayong tinatawag na academic freedom, meaning teachers are free on what to teach their children and yung manner of presentation of the lessons. Pero sa basic education, bantay sarado pa din yan. Unlike sa college na mas free yung mga professors na mag-teach or mag-instruct ng kanilang mga students, sa basic education, considering na nasa murang edad pa yung mga bata, very strict pa din yung pagbabantay na yung mga teachers hindi basta-basta, hindi kung ano-ano lang yung tinuturo ng mga bata, sa mga bata. Yung sex education, I don't see anything wrong with it because sooner or later, children would have to confront that reality. And instead of learning or knowing about it elsewhere, and curiosity would get the better of them, why not approach it in a scientific, educational way na ma-appreciate nila in that perspective and not in the perspective na hindi maganda. So, yun, nasa creativity na rin yan ng designers of the curriculum and the teachers who would present it. I think. I hope I was able to address that, but that's a very difficult question.
Thank you, Atty. Very clear naman kasi talaga since very controversial nga siya. And kasi as long as it educates the children and not to trigger anything other than education, maganda naman siya. And dapat yung approach sa kanya is tama nga sa attorney, hindi malaswa. Maganda na appropriate talaga siya for school-aged children.
Ayan.
Yun, hindi yung kung ano-ano na lang basta maipresent na ano. Tsaka we need to trust the experts in education. Kasi 'di ba, kapag magte-take ka naman education, 'di ba, Carol, may mga curriculum naman kayo on how to do a lesson plan, kung ano yung magiging outcome nun and everything. So ayun, so let's just trust the educators and yung quality nga ng education or school na pinapasukan na ating mga kabataan.
Ayan, tama Sister Biangs. Katulad nga niya sinabi ni attorney na yung curriculum, hindi lang basta-basta yun ginagawa. Hindi yun one day lang na naisip lang nila, pasok na natin to sa curriculum to sex ed. Hindi, pinag-aaralan siya ng sobrang tagal. May process talaga siya kasi iba-iba yung tao na nandun, tumitingin, kasi pinag-aralan din namin yan kung paano gumawa ng curriculum. Yung process lang, pero hindi kami gumawa kasi hindi kami expert para doon. So, madami yan kasi hindi lang basta yung unang nagawa nyo, yun na yun. Madami pa yung i-revise hanggang sa may kita nila na eto, fit talaga to para sa mga bata. Tsaka yung katulad nga yung sabi mo, Sister Biancs, na gumagawa ng lesson plan. Totoo yung kapag sabi nga ni attorney na kapag mga basic ed, yun yung mga high school, elementary, mga ganyan, is yung nila, lesson plan nila, chine-check talaga yan. Tinitingnan kung paano yung flow, ano yung masabihin mo, yung ano mo, para makita nila kung ano yung mga bawal, kung hindi dapat, kung appropriate ba yung para sa bata. So,
Yes.
maganda din naman siya kung magiging tama lang talaga yung approach at hindi gagamitin para abusuhin yung mga bata, yung mga kaisipan nila, yung mga ganun.
Amen. Ayan. So, thank you, Attorney, for the very detailed insights. Kasi kahit medyo, ayun nga, na ang dami kasing tanong and medyo controversial nga yung last
totoo.
question. Pero at least naman lang, nagka-idea tayo na educating our children is not that easy.
Totoo.
Katulad ka ng sabi, it takes a village to raise a child. Ayan. So, part din tayo ng community. Part din ng community is yung church natin. So, as much as possible, dito pa lang sa church, marami nang natututunan yung mga bata, yung mga kabataan.
Totoo, Sister Biancs. Isa na nga dyan yung madami tayo natutunan. O na-train talaga tayo nung mga bata pa tayo. Is yung Pathfinder, one way din yan na sobrang na-train yung mga kabataan sa loob ng church.
Discipline din kasi yun.
Totoo,
sa
Sister
way of
Bianca.
discipline. Ayan, and nakapagsabi rin ng ating ACS leader, si Ma'am Mayfort Luneta, sabi niya, dapat wala munang judgment pag nag-share about sex education, saka baka samahan na may sense of responsibility.
Ayan, tama.
Very true naman. Ayan, so maganda yung maganda talaga yung topic ng End It Now natin ngayon.
Totoo, Sister Bianca. Sobrang ganda. Hindi lang niya ina-address yung pagiging abuse ng mga bata, mga women sa loob ng bahay, kundi ina-address din neto yung mga
Yung possible roots or causes bakit may abuse.
Totoo, Sister
Ayan, and we
Bianca.
are very thankful for attorney kasi despite of her situation, kasi hindi maganda kasi yung pakiramdam ni attorney. But never in her nung nagdi-discuss siya, hindi ako nakarinig ng ubo.
Totoo,
Or yung-
Sister Bianca.
Alam mo, inaabangan ko rin yan kasi nung kinakausap ko si Sister Lizelle na masama din yung pakiramdam, ubo siya ng ubo kanina. Ayan, so praise God talaga, attorney, for sharing the message and insights. Yan, kahit na medyo hindi maganda yung situation nyo ngayon.
Ayan, tama, Sister Bianca.
Wala nang may additional na katanungan sa
Hapong
hapon na
ito, wala na. Siguro masyado, yung mga agam-agam nila, medyo nagkaroon naman ng linaw kahit papano, Sister Bianca.
Ayan, so I think Sister Carol and attorney, before we officially end the program ngayon, siguro let's ask attorney if you have any final words or message para po sa ating mga viewers about the topic for today.
Okay, so on a final note po, with regard to violence and pornography, I would just like to remind everyone, particularly our parents, that our children are placed in a very difficult situation now because yung environment na kinakalakhan nila is challenging because they are bombarded with all sorts of bad influences. So, malaki po ang role or responsibility natin as parents, or not just as parents, but adults in the community or at home, na gabayan yung ating mga bata. And we have to perform our godly duty of protecting the physical, mental, emotional, and above all, the spiritual well-being of our children. Because when the time comes, sisingilin tayo dyan. May accounting ang Panginoon, parents, kung paano natin pinalaki, inaruga, and dinisiplina ang ating mga bata. So, the responsibility is huge, but we are not without help because heaven is just a prayer away. So our help is always with our performance of our responsibilities should always be coupled with earnest prayers. Yan lang po. Maraming salamat.
Amen. Amen to that. Kaya nga
Amen.
sa Bible quiz natin kanina, Sister Carol, no? Grabe yung punishment ng ating Panginoon kay Priest Ellie kasi nga, yun nga.
Hindi niya naturuan yung mga anak niya, no?
Yes.
Sister Bianca. So sabi nga ni attorney, mahirap nga, pero hindi yun dahilan kasi nga one prayer lang yung katapat,
Yes.
makakailing tayo sa Panginoon just in prayer. Ayan.
Amen. Ayan. So mga kapatid, salamat po sa patuloy na panonood sa ating afternoon Sabbath program ngayong hapon at lalo na ngayong Community Guest Day at yung topic natin na End It Now na Bringing Peace Home. Salamat po mga kapatid dahil kaninang umaga hanggang ngayong hapon ay kasama pa rin po namin kayo. Ayan. So bago tayo manalangin, Sister Caro, inaanyayahan ko po ang bawat isa na patuloy pong suportahan ang Pasig SDA Church. Meron po tayong online services tuwing midweek and Vesper every 7 p.m. Meron din po tayong Sabbath School Divine or Hour of Worship and AY every Saturday.
Ayan. So wag po ninyong kalimutan na lagi pong sumabaybay at saka i-like na rin po ang ating page sa Facebook at saka subscribe po ang ating YouTube channel para maging updated po tayo sa lahat po ng program natin through online.
Ayan, at bagamat po nasa pandemic po tayo at hindi po tayo nakakasimba physically sa church, hindi pa rin po yun isang magiging dahilan para hindi na po tayo makapag-tithes and offerings. Makikita nyo po sa Facebook page ng Pasig SDA Church kung paano po ang online giving po natin. I-message nyo na lang din po ang Pasig SDA Church kung meron po kayong mga katanungan kung paano po tayo makakapagbigay online.
Ayan. Amen, Sister Bianca.
Ayan, so salamat po sa lahat ng mga nakinig at syempre kay attorney din po sa kanyang pag-provide ng message. So Sister Carol, tayo po muna ay manalangin bago tayo ay magtapos. So lahat po tayo ay yumuko para sa panalangin. Ama po namin sa langit, kami po ay nagpapasalamat dahil ang topic po namin ngayong umaga ay napaka-importante lalo na ngayon sa mga kabataan at Panginoon, kami po'y humihingi ng gabay at patnubay sa pang-araw-araw po namin. Lahat po sana ng aming mga gagawin at iisipin at sasabihin ay naayon lamang po sa inyong pong kagustuhan. Panginoon, gabayan niyo po ang bawat isa at bigyan niyo po sila ng good health, lalo na po ang ating pong speaker na si attorney. Sana po ay marami pa po siyang ma-inspire at ma-bless po sa kanya pong mga sasabihin at ganoon na din po ang aming pong mga kapatiran na may mga karamdaman. Panginoon, patuloy niyo po kaming i-bless at patnubayan sa aming pong mga work, sa aming pong mga klase at sa iba po pa naming mga ginagawa. Patuloy niyo po pong gabayan at patnubayan din po ang Pasig SDA Church at ang mga miyembro po nito at ang iba pa po, Panginoon, na hindi pa po kasama sa iglesia. Salamat po, Panginoon, sa mga biyayang amin pong natanggap at patawarin niyo po kami sa aming mga pagkukulang at pagkakasala. Sa pangalan ni Jesus. Amen. Ayan. So mga kapatid, salamat po sa pag-attend po ng program namin na may pamagat na End It Now, Bringing Peace Home. Happy Sabbath po sa inyong lahat.
Happy
at magandang
Sabbath
hapon.
po.